Hi, I'm Alex, welcome to the channel and thanks for tuning in. So in today's video we're discussing HITI, but specifically the acquisition which announced today of FABCBD, a leading CBD brand in the US. Now as always on this channel we'll discuss all the specific details of the transaction and we'll dive into the details of exactly whether or not this is a good deal. So if you're interested in HITI, then this is definitely one you don't want to miss out on. I'm still getting lots of messages about the fake account pretending to be me. So please remember, if it's me that's replying to you in the comments, my name will be highlighted. I will never ask you to join a WhatsApp group or to send money to anyone or anywhere, so please keep that in mind. Please, as I always ask on this channel now, in our ongoing battle against clickbait content on YouTube, can you smash the like button so the algorithm knows that it doesn't need to only push the sensationalist content. It's not good for the community in the long term, and the support you guys have shown for this cause so far by hitting the like button every time is amazing. Thank you so much, and please keep it up, it's massively appreciated. If you're new to the channel, make sure you're subscribed. If you want to see more exclusive content, live video calls and join the private Discord group, then check out the Patreon. And as always, I'm not a financial advisor. This video is purely for entertainment and educational purposes only, but let's get straight into it. So today, HITI announced its acquisition of FABCBD, a leading US manufacturer of CBD-based products, generating nearly $11 million in revenues and around $4.3 million in EBITDA. It's entirely based in the US and it retails its products on its own website. It's currently generating best-in-class margins, its gross profit margins are around 74% and its EBITDA margins are around 40%. In light of this, it's also important to remember that there have been a number of CBD-related transactions recently. Valens acquired Green Roads at the end of April and Jupiter Wellness also acquired Just CBD. Both of these deals were well received by the market and most certainly were transactions which HITI will have reviewed and will have assessed itself. So the takeaways from this are that of these deals, whilst not the largest, FABCBD is the most profitable and does have the best user reviews. Personally, I'm very pleased with this transaction and it's clear they have cherry-picked this asset out of many others which are available on the market. Now, it's not new news to us as investors that HITI has been preparing to increase its acquisition-led growth and its acquisition strategy. It is something that the company has discussed in most of their recent announcements and it's part of the reason for the recent $100 million base shelf offering they filed. When I discussed this in a recent video on the same topic, I said that the dilutionary impact of this was not an issue if it was used for accretive acquisitions. Here is the latest example of this. I'll dive into the exact details of the transaction and the impacts of this. However, as I've said for a long time, this is just the tip of the iceberg. I expect many more acquisitions to be made by the company over the coming year, all of which I do believe will be very accretive to shareholder value. It's very likely at this point in time the company is in many discussions with many other potential acquisition targets. It will be negotiating deals with several parties at this point in time, and this is something that I do believe will accelerate when the uplisting is completed too. So personally, I think this is definitely a space we should be keeping our eyes peeled on. So when talking about the transaction, let's firstly talk about the actual deal dynamics. HITI is paying 6 times the trailing 12 months EBITDA for the company. Firstly, this is a great acquisition. It's hard to find any companies valued at 6 times EBITDA, let alone a profitable US-based CBD business with phenomenal growth potential and one which brings such potential for synergy and cross-sell. It also brings with it more US presence for HITI, which is great news for the company. They do it again and again, paying really good multiples for companies which you would expect to see transact at much higher valuations. In a moment we will touch again on how and why they can do this, but this would be a company that would be considered undervalued if it were trading at less than 15 times. We know that HITI is currently trading at around 26 times forward EBITDA at the point in time of filming. They paid 6 times trailing EBITDA for FABCBD. So in terms of multiple arbitrage, that is the value created from just the difference in the value paid versus the valuation that HITI is currently trading at, that is 20 times EBITDA. That's 20 times the 4.3 million EBITDA that FABCBD is generating, or $86 million of incremental value on an enterprise basis generated just from this transaction and just in that multiple arbitrage element of the transaction. This is also calculated on a really conservative basis, given that that $4.3 million of EBITDA and the 6 times multiple paid for that is on a trailing 12-month basis. If you look at HITI on a trailing 12-month basis, that's actually trading around 43 times multiple. So ultimately the value creation here just from multiple arbitrage alone is massive, and that figure I mentioned earlier, that $86 million, is very conservative. Then the additional element to consider here is the strategic fit of the deal. This again is where the power of the HITI platform comes into itself. I'm not going to go into massive detail in that again, so check out the previous videos on that if you want to understand it again. However, the capabilities it has and the coverage of various distribution channels which HITI has ultimately means that on day one it can immediately provide incremental opportunities for cross-sell and synergy potential. Ultimately, FABCBD products can now be retailed across HITI's other e-commerce brands, Grass City, CBD City, Smoke Cartel and the physical stores. Additionally, the reach of the product can be increased beyond just the US where it is currently. There's huge potential for HITI to deliver sales for the product in Europe through its existing channels and brands, and where CBD as a market overall is expected to grow phenomenally. As the leading brick and mortar retailer in Canada, it also has a great opportunity to push the FABCBD products through its own retail channel there. This acquisition also helps the company get a stronger foothold in the US. This is strategically key as the federal legalization debate continues and in ensuring a competitive positioning versus the established MSOs. Now, the final factor here that's definitely important to consider is the fact that FABCBD is currently generating EBITDA margins of around 40%. Now, following the acquisition, there will be a large proportion of costs which are duplicated and that could be eliminated from the acquired company. For example, you don't need 2 finance teams, you don't need 2 IT teams, so there are a lot of duplicated costs. This means that there's a huge cost-saving potential, a lot of synergies that will be generated, and an ability to drive up the EBITDA margins upon consolidation, whether that's to 50% or perhaps higher, who knows. However, that's certainly another angle of value creation here. Now, there is one important consideration around this, which we will come back to, which is around the fact that currently this is assuming 80% of the company is acquired. Now, the remaining 20% can and likely will be acquired, but this is something which we'll touch on shortly. Now, as we have discussed in previous videos too, we know that analyst price target upgrades are positive for the stock price, and we do know that many of the analysts which do cover HITI and also some of its competitors have upgraded the price target for its competitors. For example, Echelon recently upgraded their price target for Fire and Flower. We also know that analysts will update the price target on the news of this acquisition, and this is something that we can expect in pretty short order too. Now, let's also quickly discuss the Bayline Capital dynamic here. This is actually quite interesting and definitely worth discussing. So basically, they're an advisor who's helped with the transaction and have helped introduce the opportunity to HITI and basically facilitated in getting a deal over the line. Now, they have been paid a fee, and it is a good one, but interestingly, this is in both cash and HITI shares. Now, I am keen to learn more about the deal dynamics here and how Bayline got involved, but the fact they're taking some of their payment in HITI shares is definitely a good sign. Not only do they clearly agree with the short-term valuation potential here, but they're also clearly incentivized now to help bring the best deals and the most deal flow to HITI, rather than its competitors who are also looking for deals and definitely would have jumped at the FABCBD opportunity too. Now, this is important because I firmly believe that every competitor of HITI who has the ability to undertake acquisitions would have liked to acquire FABCBD had the opportunity presented itself, especially at the valuation multiple which HITI was acquiring the business for. Such deals will always be competitive, so this is a really nice dynamic to have at play. Now, the other interesting dynamic to discuss here is around the structure of the deal, both in terms of only buying 80% of the company on day one, and also around the split of consideration for the shareholders. Firstly, let's discuss the split of consideration. The founder and sole shareholder of FABCBD, Josh Delaney, is taking $8 million in HITI stock. The number of shares which that accounts to will be determined on the basis of the closing price, and he's also taking $12.6 million in cash. Now, he will be taking a role in the group on an ongoing basis, and the fact that he's taken $8 million in HITI shares clearly shows his belief in the potential for the combined business going forward, and that's a good sign. Now, clearly the nearly $13 million in cash he is taking is a very large sum of money, but personally, for me, I see this as perfectly reasonable. A large chunk of this will go on taxes, however, it also does enable him to change his own personal financial position. It enables him to de-risk from that one position he had, and personally I have no issues with this whatsoever. Now, the other component to consider is the fact that only 80% of the company is being acquired on day one. Now, this does not change the dynamics or anything fundamentally. HITI has full control over the company and will be able to consolidate the financials within its own. The interesting part here, though, comes down to the acquisition of the remaining 20%. Now, without getting super into the details, there are both a call and a put option, so either at HITI's decision or at Josh's, the founder of FABCBD, to buy or sell the remaining stake. Now, this is in place for a period of up to 3 years, and the valuation of the company will be determined on the basis of 6 times its trailing 12 months EBITDA, so exactly the same way the business was valued today. Now, I will try and dig into this some more, and I will come back with an update once I have more insight, but clearly there's big synergy potential here, as well as a massive cross-sell potential. So it's actually not unreasonable for a potential doubling of FABCBD's EBITDA, which, if that was the case, could value the remaining stake in FABCBD at around $10 million. Clearly, if this was to happen, that would mean that overall the HITI group's performance would have gone very, very well, and actually that increase in valuation would then actually be offset by an increase in the overall valuation multiple and the valuation of HITI itself. Now, one final thought here is that clearly this deal is only a very small component of the overall potential firepower which HITI now has access to. There's much more in the tank, and there's a lot more to come in this respect. What's more is if the deals continue to be done at such great valuations, then personally I'm really excited by this. Anyway, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please smash the like button. If you're new to the channel, make sure you're subscribed and check out the Patreon if you want to join the live video calls, private Discord and a load of other things. As always, please let me know your thoughts and comments in the comment section below. I find it so interesting to hear all the different opinions, the perspectives, so please get involved. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in another video.